The Coonhound Collective podcast is brought to you by CZ Welding and Custom Dog Boxes. Dog boxes built by hunters for hunters. Check these guys out today. This is your host, Jason Snellgrove, and I will be your guide as we journey down the road to pleasure hunt or hitting the long trail to those great comp hunts. This is the Coonhound Collective podcast. Welcome to the Coonhound Collective podcast today. Today's going to be a little bit different interview than what we normally have on here, as we're not going to talk about coon dogs today. We are going to talk about a dog that trees squirrels, and I'm going to let Mr. Ben Hill, he's here with me today, and I'm going to let him tell you about falconry. Something I seen on Instagram, some pretty good videos, very interesting, and but first off, we're going to let Ben tell us a little bit about himself and where you're from and how's it going today, Ben?
I'm doing very well. I appreciate you inviting me on the show.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you taking the time to do this. Won't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and kind of where you're from?
All right. Well, my name is Ben Hill. I'm 39 years old, raised within 20 miles of Athens, Georgia. I've been a sportsman my whole life. I guess I really took off when I was about 20, 21 years old. Got big into deer hunting, and got nice deer on the wall from both a gun and a bow and arrow. And I've enjoyed the words pretty much my whole life.
Yeah, I seen some pictures on your Instagram page of some deer and some other game that you have taken. But the reason why I reached out to you is because something that I found very interesting is these birds and this dog that you have. So, without keeping anybody else in suspense, won't you go ahead and kind of explain to us some of the history and kind of what you got there on the birds, and when it comes time, you can tell us about your dog.
Okay. Well, a lot of people in the United States have never really heard of the sport that I practice because you can consider almost a form of art. I mean, just like coon hunting, it is a form of art. But the art that I practice is called falconry. And when I tell people about falconry, people automatically think, oh, well, you hunt with a falcon. No, that's not necessarily true. The definition of falconry, if you look it up, is it is defined by hunting game in its natural habitat by the means of a trained raptor. With that being said, this is actually one of the oldest hunting sports in the world. This sport was originated somewhere around 4,000 years ago. And based on pictorial records, it's thought that it had originated either in Asia or the Middle East. So the term falconry is a very broad term for our sport. That term falconry covers all trained birds of prey. So you have hawks, eagles, falcons, and owls. So, and all four of these animals that you hunt with is dictated strictly by what you have available for you to hunt with them. For instance, we move to falcons. Some of the common species throughout the United States are the peregrine falcon, the saker, the gyrfalcon, and the American kestrel, which is actually America's smallest falcon. The peregrine falcon is hands down the fastest member of the animal kingdom. They can reach speeds at 240 plus miles an hour in a stoop. So if you had a falcon, typically you would be hunting quail, partridge, pheasants, any avian species, ducks, waterfowl. This is what falcons hunt 99.9% of the time is avian species. So me being from Georgia, unfortunately, I don't have quail. I don't have pheasants. What ducks I do have are not enough to try to hunt. So what I hunt with here in the state of Georgia is a red-tailed hawk. The common species are the red-tailed hawks in America, the Harris hawks, Coopers, and the goshawk. The cool thing about red-tails is they inhabit every single continent except Antarctica. Harris hawks, they're found in the Midwest. They're very popular in falconry because of the fact Harris hawks can hunt together in a family pack, as you would see. So they are actually known as wolves of the skies, as they are one of the only raptors that hunt in packs. So now we move to eagles. We all know what eagles are. They're very big, powerful animals. The golden eagle is the most common eagle used in falconry. Bald eagles, they have a bad temperament, so they're really not good for falconry because even though they do target mammals, a lot of their diet are fish. Golden eagles, there are some licensed golden eagles falconers in the states. You have to be a master class falconer to have an eagle. We'll get into that later. But golden eagles are typically hunted out west where you have jackrabbits, where you have large game. Your average golden eagle can weigh 8, 9 pounds, and so can your average black-tailed, white-tailed jackrabbit that you have out west. So if you hunt with an eagle, odds are you're hunting big game in America, like a jackrabbit or something like that. So the last but not least are owls. As we all know, owls are nocturnal. They hunt at night versus diurnal, which are your eagles, your hawks, and your falcons. Just because of the fact they are night hunters, they all hunt by stealth. They are almost 100% completely silent flight, and that's how they hunt. Very few falconers are successful hunting with owls because of that fact. They are primed to hunt at nighttime. We keep up with our birds using bells and things like that. So when she makes a move, I hear her bells. It'll be almost impossible for a falconer to hunt with an owl at nighttime with bells on because they hunt strictly out of stealth. Out of all the four of them listed here, they are considered apex predators. Birds of prey are at the top of the food chain. These animals show no fear, they show no pain or emotion. And the way you train these animals is pretty much through their appetite. They are very food-driven animals, so they're controlled through their appetite. So when you actually get your bird trained, we'll kind of get into that in a moment. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll go ahead and cover training. So we actually trap these birds from the wild once you get your permits and begin training. So the first thing you must do is you have to gain this animal's trust. You have to prove to it that you're not going to hurt it. You're going to feed it, you're going to water it, and you're going to give it housing. The three things that animal needs to live and survive. So during training, I offer the animal food. The more the animal eats from me, the more trust it is gaining. So once training is kind of progressing here, I'm actually dropping the weight of the bird to get a response. Now, some people kind of say, oh, well, you starve these birds. No, we don't starve these animals. Once they're trained in hunting, they are more like performance athletes. We take, let's say, an obese human, and we work them out. We drop their food intake. We pretty much drop the fat off of them to where they're lean muscle. And that's what we want these birds when we hunt them, because it also gives them the drive to hunt. So through training, once the bird is actually eating from my glove, every couple of days, I'll just step back, and then I'll have the bird fly to me. And of course, it's on a tether. And then once you get that instant response of food, you know that bird's coming to your glove. That's pretty much when you're ready to hunt. So when you get to hunt with them, the bird actually follows the falconer through the woods, because during that 3 to 4 week period of training, one thing you have instilled into that bird's head is that you are its food source. So when we go hunting, the bird completely free flies. At any time, that bird, with her own thinking capabilities, her own personality, is like, hey, I'm out of here, and just fly off. But the bird has learned to trust you. The bird has learned that, hey, that's an easy food source. And it's walking through the woods and it's walking away from it. I need to keep up with my food source. So that's kind of how the bird follows you. You want the bird hungry when you start hunting. You don't want to starve them, of course. Starving birds do not have nowhere near the energy to hunt. So it's my responsibility while we're going through the woods is to try to flush game for her. So myself and my dog go through the woods. We shake vines. We shake trees just to try to flush a squirrel. So she stays 60, 70 feet in the treetops. And every 50, 60 yards, she'll what we call follow up, which means she'll fly close to me in a tree, close, usually in 20 yards and, 50, 60 feet above me. So hunting dogs play a very vital role in falconry. They can flush more game than a human ever will. If you hunt with dogs, you know that their nose plays a huge role in how to flush game. So I want to take just a moment to tell you about my dog and how he came into my life. So when I become involved in falconry back in 2014, 2015, my wife and I made an agreement. She said, honey, I will support you 100% in your falconry endeavors. I asked that you allow me to adopt a puppy from the pound. And I was like, deal, hands down, deal. Absolutely. You take care of the dog, I'll take care of the bird. It's a win-win for both of us. So Commander here was brought home 5 days after I brought home my very first red tail from the wild. And as the dog grew, he would always stand outside the window, just bark at squirrels. I'm like, oh, that's cool. So by now, this is probably November of that year. I've already been successful with my very first bird catching squirrels. And my sponsor, who we'll get into later, said, hey, you got that little hunt dog. You should, put him under the bird. I was like, well, what could it hurt? So I start taking Commander to the woods with us. I didn't have to train this dog at all other than your simple sit, stay, shake, come, load up. His hunting capabilities, I have no clue where they came from. But from the first time I put him in the woods under that hawk, they became apparent. And this little dog right here flushed so much game that I would have never seen. And it just amazes me because he was 6 weeks old when I got him, and the vet told us, the animal shelter told my wife he was a Dachshund Terrier mix. And he's still a little guy. I mean, he's short, but maybe 35, 38 pounds. But he is now my best friend. I have personally never had a hunting dog until now. And he's a family companion as well. So every time I hunt, he is there with me. So he is part of the team. So they play a very big role. A lot of people I know in falconry, they do hunt their birds under dogs. So went over that, how we hunt. The bird follows me through the woods. It's my job and my dog's job to flush game for the bird. So as she's following the food source, if we flush a rabbit or a squirrel, we're still supplying that food. But now she's got to catch it and bring that squirrel to the ground or pin that rabbit to the ground. So the bird is trained. We've been hunting. We caught a squirrel. So once my bird catches a squirrel, let's say there's 2 instances. She catches one in the tree. 9 times out of 10, she'll spread her wings and do a helicopter. She'll just gradually spin down all the way to the ground. We go to her, us as falconers, we go to our birds as quick as we possibly can to help her dispatch the quarry. And the reason behind that is, for one, we want the bird to know that we are there to help it. Secondly, even in the wild, when a raptor catches a squirrel or whatever they're after, it's not an instant death for the prey. Squirrels, it could take a raptor 30 seconds. It could take a raptor up to a few minutes for them to completely dispatch a squirrel on their own. So that's why we go to them, is help them dispatch. The quicker we can go to them and help dispatch that quarry, the less likely they are to get injuries. Well, if you're wondering what injuries could a squirrel do, a squirrel can crack open a chestnut with their jaws and their teeth are pointed, and they're not necessarily sharp, but they have a tremendous amount of pressure behind them. A wrong bite on a raptor's toe could leave that toe completely useless. If it severs the tendon, that toe will be completely useless. So squirrels are considered dangerous game. Well, what about a rabbit? What about a rabbit is dangerous? Well, a rabbit will buck. They can kick really hard. The most of the rabbits that my bird catches, almost to the ground, is just as heavy as my bird. So I have a 1,200 gram bird, and I have a 1,200 gram rabbit. And that rabbit could kick my bird really hard, break her wing, break her leg. So that's why we get to them as quick as we can. We help them actually dispatch the cat. So after the actual dispatch is done, the prey is completely dispatched. We trade these animals off, because that prior to the 1600s or 1700s when people used raptors. If they wanted small game to eat, they had to use the raptor. Well, of course, if they catch a squirrel, the falconer, and that feeds their falconer's family. So even hundreds of even thousands of years ago, we trade these animals off the exact same way as for. They're trained to accept a lure reward. And on this lure is usually a 10 to 20 gram chunk of meat. So when the bird sees that little chunk of meat, 20 grams don't sound like a lot. But on squirrels especially, they have very tough hides. It could take a raptor, 30, 45 seconds to break into the skin and begin eating, which typically that's going to be in the front armpit area of a squirrel. That's where their fur and their skin is least thick. So the bird almost expects that reward when they catch game. So when I toss that little bag, I'll have my gloved hand on the squirrel. When I toss that bag out, the bird releases the squirrel and goes to that bag because she gets instant satisfaction. She gets fed instantly for her catch. So that's how falconers actually get the prey that the raptor catches for them. So falconry is actually one of the highest regulated sports in all of America, hands down. So some of the legal requirements we'll go over right quick. The first thing to do to really get your foot in the door for falconry is that you must take a exam of 105 questions administered through the United States Fish and Wildlife Services. And you must make an 80 percentile or better on that exam in order to consider yourself passed. On this, the exam, it goes over everything falconry related. The birds themselves, different species, the diseases they can get, some of the home remedies you can do with them, husbandry, which husbandry is pretty much being sure your bird is well taken care of in a night, and secure, being sure they feel comfortable. That's husband, pretty much. A couple of other things that you do once you can do actually take the test and pass it. The test goes over, like I said, it goes over everything falcon related for birds of prey. A lot of stuff that you have to study, and it took me about 6 months of studying just to pass my test. So let's say you actually took the test and you passed it. The next thing you must do is secure a sponsor. A sponsor's duty is to provide help, advice, and assistance for those 2 years of an apprenticeship. So if you get into falconry and you secure a sponsor, you would then be an apprentice. So potential sponsors must hold a general or a master class license. We'll get to that in a moment. Some of the legal equipment that you must have before you get your license are the anklets, which are the leather pieces that go around the bird's leg. You got to have one set of the slitted and non-slitted jesses. The jesses are the leather pieces that hang down from the anklets. You have to have a lure, a perch, a scale, a creance. So a creance is falconry term for really long dogleg. It's like made of paracord. I got like a 2.5 pound piece of wood on the other end. And that's what I hooked to my bird during training outside before she's ready to play fly. You must have a swivel, which the swivel recommended for a female redtail is a Sampo swivel. They're known for very, very heavy duty stuff, offshore leaders. You must have a bath pan and a muse. Muse is where you house the bird. It's like a falconry term for really big birdhouse. The birdhouse, the muse, must be large enough for the bird to flap its wings from perch to perch. Typically, an 8-foot square will be sufficient. I actually built mine 10 by 10 by 8 foot tall. You must have vertical bars for the windows. Half the roof of it can be open as long as you, of course, run 1/2-inch wood on the top of it, and that way you kind of have an open and closed enclosure. And you must have sufficient perches, of course, in the mew itself. So once you have passed your test, you have secured a sponsor. You have all of your legal equipment that you must have. The next thing you would do is call your local DNR agent. Say, hi, my name is Ben Hill. I need to get my falconry stuff inspection. So you would actually call your local DNR agent, and what they would do is they would come to your home and they would evaluate your equipment and your mews. Of course, this is a scheduled inspection. So as of now, you've taken your test. You've obtained your sponsor. You've got all your equipment plus some. and you've had your inspection. If everything goes well, within 3 to 4 weeks, you will get an email or something in the mail from your local DNR saying you have your permit to trap a bird. So pretty much what you get sent in the mail is your trapping permit, and it is your falconry license. So you and your sponsor go trap a bird. But before you do that, I mentioned the legal equipment that you must have. So I went over the anklets, the jesses, the lure, perch, scale, 3-inch swivel, bath hand, the muse, and the leash. Well, you got to think, are you going to hold that bird on your hand without a glove? No, sir. You need a gauntlet or a falconry glove. My glove is actually like 6 layers of cowhide, and that way the talons will not pierce through it. You also have to have a hunting vest. You have to have a giant hood, which is what you put the bird in as you travel. And you also have to have a first aid kit for your bird, which is typically children's Benadryl in case they get snake bit or they crash into a ant pile or something like that. We use silver sulfadenzine in replacement of Neosporin for bites, betadine to keep infections down if they do get bit, things like that. Cotton swab, just things like that. Just a first aid kit strictly for your bird that you can carry with you while you're out hunting. So, excuse me, trapping is probably one of the funnest things in the sport because you literally go out and trap a wild bird off the side of the road. And you would think, well, you trap on the side of the road? Yes. We are the only sportsmen in America that can legally use the right-of-way of the road for trapping. So our trap is kind of consisted of a wire cage we put a gerbil in, and all over this cage is monofilament slip knots. I use 50-pound test. And so the objective is 9 times out of 10, when you see a red-tailed hawk that we're speaking of, you're going to see it perched up on a power line. And you literally just go down the same side of the road the bird is on. You just put the trap out on the right of way and you drive off. But you're going to trap with your sponsor. So one of you will always keep your eye on that bird as you're driving away. You get 100 plus yards down the road, you turn around and you watch that bird and you watch that trap. Once that bird commits to the trap, it'll come off that pole and it'll start footing the trap. And eventually its foot or its toe is going to stick itself into one of those nooses, pull back, and you got them. Now, typically these animals weigh 2.5 pounds. My trap weighs 4 pounds. Excuse me. That means they can drag it a little bit, but there's no way they're going to get vertical lift and fly off with a trap. So even a large redtail can barely carry her own body weight. So if I have a 1,200-gram redtail, she's not going to get vertical lift with a 1,200-gram rabbit. She may get 1 or 2 feet off the ground and go 40, 50 yards, but there's no way she could get vertical that high. Owls, on the other hand, they have a chance of doing that. They can lift a lot more of their body weight. Excuse me. So the classes of falconry. Once you do attain your sponsor and you get your license, you are an apprentice for your first 2 years. Now, after your 2 years is up, it will be up to your sponsor whether or not he or she thinks, okay, this person in 2 years has learned how to consistently catch game with the raptor. If that decision is made, then your sponsor will upgrade you to general license. So as an apprentice, you're allowed 1 bird, and that's typically going to be 1 of 3 species here in the States. 99.9% of us start with a red-tailed hawk. Other people can also purchase a Harris hawk. I believe in the state of Georgia, you can't purchase a Harris hawk for your first bird. And the American kestrel, which is America's smallest falcon. You have to micromanage their weight. I do not recommend it to anybody that wants to start in falconry. Red tails are hands down the best bird to start with, and they're some of the favorite birds in my personal opinion. I'll always fly red-tailed hawk. They're big, they're robust, they're kind of like a tank. She may be a little slow getting there, but she hits hard, and that's why we chase squirrels with these animals, because they are big. They can take bites on their feet. Their feet and their toes are just really large in diameter. So, I said they are a dangerous game, and they have to learn foot placement in order not to be bitten. And typically they'll learn that in the first half the season. Once your bird starts catching squirrels, it's going to learn to catch that squirrel without being bit. So once you get into general class, that allows you to own 3 raptors. That includes owls, falcons, and hawks. You cannot own a eagle just yet. You have to wait until you're a master class falconer to do that. So you will stay a general from your second year, from your second year, first year's general, third season as a falconer, to 7 years. So as of now, you pretty much have 8 years experience under your belt. My math is correct. After you complete your time in general, typically this varies by state, but in the state of Georgia, you must have at least 2 other master falconers recommend your upgrade to master class. So after next year, I am eligible for upgrade. I have to have 8 seasons under my belt. I'm fixing to complete my 7th season now. After that season, I request to upgrade to master. There will have to be 2 other master falconers that agree that I'm, I guess you could say, ready for master class. And the only thing that really changes is if your pockets are deep enough, you can get an eagle. The only way you can get an eagle from the wild is if you have a state where eagles are depreding on farm species. So you will actually request for a predation permit, which would actually allow you to trap a juvenile golden eagle in the States. Other than that, you would definitely have to buy an eagle. So some of the more frequently asked questions about these animals are, can you pet them? Well, unfortunately, my bird trusts only myself and myself only. So if you get close enough to her, I would much rather her bite you than foot you. These animals have incredible pressure in their toes. That's something I didn't go over, so I will go over that now. Their beak is typically not their weapon on a hawk. Their feet are their true weapons. They have 4 hypodermic needle-sharp talons on each foot. And my red tail has every bit of 350 psi in her feet. So when she grabs a squirrel, she's putting every bit of her strength into that squirrel. So that's how they dispatch them in the wild. The squirrel can exhale, but then it cannot inhale because of the pressure on its chest. Do they bite? Yes, they will bite, but you're talking, 40, 50 psi versus 350 plus feet. Will they bring you what they catch back to you? No, they won't. We discussed this. Typically, when they catch game, that game is also struggling for its life. So I go to them as quick as I can to help her dispatch that catch. Another question I get asked is, how do I prep their food? What do they eat? Well, my bird eats everything she catches. And when I say everything, let's say I have a squirrel. The only thing I discard are the paws. I cut right at the ankles, the tail, and the digestive tract. So hearts, lungs, liver, kidneys, that gets fed as soon as we get home. The bones, the fur, the skull, the teeth, everything else on that squirrel will be eaten by my bird. On rabbits, same thing. The only thing I do is I cut off the feet and I take out the digestive tract. Hearts, lungs, liver, kidneys, that gets fed to her fresh as soon as we get home. I don't know what it was about falconry that just I took to like a fish to water. Some people do get into this and invest a lot of time and effort, and it just doesn't click with them. They can't figure out how to train their bird, or they're just not a successful falconer, and it happens. I was lucky enough where I was in my very first season. My first bird caught like 50 some squirrels, which my sponsor, who is now 15 years into the sport, like Ben, I've never heard of any apprentice in the first year in their first bird catching 50 plus heads of game. Most people catch, you caught 20 or 30 in your first year, you're doing great. So, and I guess this is one of those things. I just felt like I learned it fast, and I was kind of good at it, and it's definitely changed my lifestyle, as you can imagine, because in the back of my head every day, I know I have to, be sure this animal has a clean place to stay. I got to be sure she's got fresh water. I got to be sure I prepped her food and, thawed her food out and things like that. So I don't see myself really ever getting out of it until my feet can no longer carry my body. Another good question I get asked is, how much they weigh. I said earlier they weigh, 2.5 pounds. Excuse me for using the commie system here, but I use grams because it's so much easier to say my bird weighs 1,175 grams versus, 2 pounds, 14 ounces, and whatever that equates to. So I do use the metric system. A lot of falconers in the States do. Like I said, just because the simple fact it's easier for me to reading in grams versus pounds and ounces. Do the birds like me? That's, it's another question I get asked a lot, as the relationship between myself and the bird, and the relationship between the bird and to me, and the bird to the dog. There is a relationship, absolutely. I would be lying if I said I didn't love my bird, honestly, uh, just because of the fact that I have spent a lot of time with her. Now, does she see that in me? Absolutely not. I am a food source to her, and that's all I am. And the bond that I have with this particular animal is a strict hunting bond. She knows that, especially this time of year, 9 times out of 10, we hunt almost every day. When I go to her mute and I get her out, she knows what's going on. She knows. She sits still. I put her equipment on. She gets on the glove. We go to the truck and we go to the farm behind the house. As soon as I put her up, she already knows what she's doing. She's hunting. So that's the partnership that her and I have. She knows when she is with me, we're hunting. In the wild, these animals, they they really do. They pretty much, some struggle to survive. I mean, only 20 out of 100 that will be hatched this year in 2023. Out of 100 hatched in the next couple months, only 20 of those will see their first birthday. And then only 5 of those will see their second birthday. They have an extremely high mortality rate. The number one killer of raptors is electricity. Unfortunately, it is humans' fault. A lot of them get zapped on power poles. That's it. Second leading cause of death is collisions. Now, yes, collisions with a car, absolutely, but they could be going after a mouse or something and, collide in some briar patches. A briar gets stuck in her eye. It leads to that eye getting infected. It leads to her losing sight of that eye. It leads to her not being able to hunt it successfully and die of starvation. A lot of birds, they just don't even learn how to hunt. So they starve pretty much right off the bat. So as falconers, we trap these birds from the wild. We hone their hunting skills in over 2, 3, 4 seasons, and then we let them back go in the wild. So once they're released back into the wild, they are 10 times better off than when we trapped them. And the one and only thing that I can personally guarantee about the birds that I have hunted with for the past 7 years is once I release my bird back into the wild, that bird will not starve. And to me, that's a good feeling. I'm blessed to say, I hope nobody here listening to this has ever starved, but a lot of animals do. And it's a good feeling knowing that, hey, she may be getting hit by a car, she may be electrocuted, but that bird is not going to starve because she has proved to me close to 200 times in the past 3 seasons that bird knows how to hunt. And that's what it's about. So she will hopefully go find a mate and raise some other little squirrel killers. But that's about all I got, Jason, man. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, I've got a couple.
Sure.
Okay, so man, that's a lot and very very interesting as well. Whenever you trap these birds on the side of the road, like you were talking about with the trap, how aggressive are these birds in the wild? Whenever you first approach them, what's the technique to get them? I guess where you can handle them and get them transported.
To get them under control pretty much while during trapping, you may have seen pictures with it's called a hood that we put over the bird's head. Once we get to the bird on the trap, we'll throw a towel over the whole bird where it can't see us. We'll expose its head as long as the feet are secure. And we put this hood over. And then we'll go down its body and grab its feet. Now, I'm not worried about being bit, but you have to control those feet. Because the first time that bird sets foot on the glove, it's going to show you how much power is in those feet. So we go to the bird, throw the towel over it, get their feet under control with one hand, and then we put this hood on it. So once the hood is on it, it kind of it blanks it out. It can't see anything. So it allows us to gently get the nooses off the bird's feet. We'll inspect the bird. If it's a bird we want to keep, then we'll go one direction. If it's a bird we're like, oh, well, this bird's too small, too fat, funny looking, got weird looking feet, looking at me funny, we'll just let it go. No harm, no foul. If it's a bird that we keep, we will typically immediately put the anklets on it and put the jesses on it, and then we'll hook it to the leash. will tie that leash to their glove. Like I said, my gauntlet is 6 layers of cowhide, top and bottom. So once you take that hood off that bird and put it on your glove, of course it's going to try to fly away. It's called baiting. That's their attentive flight while tethered. And it may do that for 5 seconds. It may do it for 5 minutes, but eventually that bird's going to stand on that glove. And 9 times out of all the birds I've trapped, as soon as they stepped on my glove and got their balance, they grit down. And without a gauntlet, it could be extremely painful. 350 psi on 8 hypodermic needle sharp talons burying into even my glove. I can just feel the sheer power of the pressure. Luckily, the talons do not pierce my glove. But you gain a completely new realm of respect for these animals as a newbie once you get that first full force of a red tail's grip. And one thing about their grip is in their toes, they have locking tendons. So if you can imagine using imagine using a 3/8 drive ratchet, you can almost hear that ratcheting sound as the bird is releasing its pressure. And you can also feel it once you can actually pull the toe up. But what that means is once they put all their power into their footing, it takes them no more power to hold that foot because those tendons are locked in place. In order for her to release, she's actually got to grab harder in order to release her feet. So it's very intimidating at first. It scared the snot out of me, not going to lie. But we got through it. But they're pretty much like a wild fire-breathing dragon. They either want to get away from you or mess you up any way they can just to show you, hey, I may be a little dude compared to you, but for the size of me, I've got some weapons.
Yeah, sounds like it. So when you transport this bird from the side of the road to your house, or after you've trained it to your house to the woods to hunt, I mean, do you got a cage or bird box or something you hauling in, or is it just sitting there on the seat next to you? I mean, how are you transporting this thing?
That's a good question. It's called a giant hood. So the hood we put over the bird's head is called a hood. So the giant hood is just like you said, it's like a dog box, man. I built it out of scratch. Dimensions may be 18 inches in width, 2 foot in depth, 3 foot tall, let's just say, for instance, and it's got a perch in it. And so for when we take them home from the wild, typically we'll have all the equipment on them with the hood. And then we'll open the door to our travel container, our giant hood, and kind of push on the back of their feet on the perch, and they'll eventually step up on that perch. And they're blind, so they don't know anything, of course. They don't know any different. Pretty much you just shut the door and get home with them. As for like when my bird and I go hunting like we did earlier today, we go from the mew, 40 yards to my vehicle, and she already knows. So she doesn't even attempt to fly because she knows, hey, I got to get in my box before I get to fly and go hunting. So she, I've had her for 3 seasons. She knows that. So that's how we transport them from one place to another.
Okay. The relationship with the bird and the dog. Obviously, some of the videos I've seen, the dog's treeing, the bird goes to the dog where it's treeing at, finds a squirrel and captures the squirrel. How tough is that to get that relationship started between that bird and dog, or was it just pretty much natural?
I think this was natural because I think my little dog, he has a small natural fear of the animal, of my red tail, as it is, right? But when his adrenaline's running through the woods and he's chasing a squirrel, let's just talk about, actually, let's see, I'm at number 59 for the season. It's 56 and 57. Both these squirrels ran down the back of the tree because the squirrel is more intimidated by the hawk than me and a dog that's on the ground. But there have been so many instances where her presence in that tree will make that squirrel run down the backside of the tree and run on the ground. Well, the bird always goes for it, and she rarely misses on the ground. But on these 2 instances, she missed it. And of course, my dog is right there chasing it. Well, when she misses, it takes her a minute it takes her 5 or 6 seconds to, get 2 or 3 feet back up off the ground and start her pursuit again. Well, on these 2 catches, by that time, Commander, the dog, he caught both of these squirrels, right? So, of course, I'm kind of in freak mode because the bird don't care who's got the squirrel. she wants that squirrel for food. So I start screaming, Commander, please let it go. Bell's coming at you. Well, he didn't let go. He's doing it. He's just continuously death shaking the darn squirrel. And by the time I got there, my bird arrived right before I did. Commander had like almost the head and front shoulders in its mouth, death shaking it. And Belle, both times, had both her feet on the hind legs of that squirrel. So that just shows the respect of her not footing my dog, instead of putting her foot on what she wanted to eat. And of course, when I got there, I said, Commander, dude, let go. And he finally let go, and he doesn't get upset. He doesn't feel like he's been cheated. The bird gets to squeeze the snot out of already a dead squirrel. And then, Commander come around back because he knows he gets a treat. So during hunting, I keep a little tub of what we call tidbits, is cut up squirrels. That's how I feed her during the hunt. And Commander always gets him a couple of tidbits every single hunt, but he gets more tidbits when he catches a squirrel. So that's kind of how they respect each other. Commander's not going to run in. If she catches one first, Commander's not going to run in and try to take it from her. But if he catches it first, it seems like I've got to get there first in order for him to release it.
Yeah, well, that I'm glad you told that the way you did, because that's what I thought. I thought, well, what happens if the dog catches it first? Does the bird try to catch the dog, or But yeah, that's obviously they definitely have a working relationship. Okay, my other question is there some type of competitions that y'all compete in with these, or is this just a pleasure style sport only?
Are you tired of whipping, scolding, and shocking to make them get alone? Is your buddy tired of helping you set your dog up for correction night after night? Do you really want your dog to be alone because you forced him to be? Or would you rather him be alone because he wants to be? Grand Night Champion Small Town Lone Survivor is the product of over 25 years of strong natural-born independent traits. This bold trait has been passed down from generation to generation and is showing up in loner offspring today. Loner is a direct son of Hall of Fame Grand Night Champion Cabin Creek Rowdy and Grand Night Champion Lonesome Dove Lori. Loner has a booming mouth that is talked about in every cast he has been in, including the 2021 World Hunt Finals. Loner is a no-reverse, ball-mouth open trailer who ends it plussed up with a huge dying locate and steady chop. Loner loves getting split and is a stay-put gun-pressure tree dog. Loner's intelligence is also impressive. He knows over 12 voice and hand signal commands. Loner has a character that loves like Jesus, but he doesn't walk on water. If you're interested in breeding to Loner, contact Brett Stevens at Small Town English Kennels at 417-300-3777 or find him on Facebook.
If you're interested in running a stud ad for your dog here on the Coonhound Collective podcast, reach out to us at thecoonhoundcollective@gmail.com. Send us a message through Facebook or Instagram, and we'll be glad to get with you to get you an ad built and get you pricing on all of our ads.
Yeah, so we don't have competitions. What we have are meets. So I am competitive, but I'm only competitive with myself. I don't go to another falconer and be like, you want to call it 27 squirrels? Ha! I'll call it 70. That's not the mentality of a falconer. As long as you hunt your bird the way it should be hunted and it catches game, that's what it is for me. But as for competition, there's really no competition between falconers. Excuse me. But we do have meets. Like NAFA is North American Falconer Association, which I was fortunate enough to attend back in 2021, and it was in Lone Wolf, Oklahoma, kind of middle of the United States. And there was probably 300 plus falconers from all over the world there. So every species of falconry birds were there, from falcons, eagles. I didn't see the first owl, but we had a ton of falcons, eagles, and hawks, because out in Oklahoma, you have a better duck population and waterfowl and birds for the falcons, and you have jackrabbits for the hawks. So as falconers, we just go out, excuse me, we go out together. One bird flies their hawk for, let's say, 2 hours. If, pretty much we like to at least give them enough opportunity to get a flush. So if we flush a couple of jacks and the bird either catches or it don't catch, we'll just put that bird up and get another one out. So, excuse me, we have meets, but it's not competition. So here in Georgia, we have Georgia Falconry Association, which I am actually a member and actually on the board of directors. You could just Google GeorgiaFalconryAssociation.com, and it shows everything about what we as Georgia Falconry Association members, well, that's what we stand for in falconry. So you can check that out.
Okay. Yeah. Well, man, that's some interesting stuff. That, like I said, whenever I seen your Instagram, I thought, man, this is cool. I've got to talk to this guy and get some more information on it, because I had no idea. And I'm sure there's going to be some of my listeners out there, maybe they have heard of it, maybe they haven't, but I've almost kept you an hour. I know it's hard to believe, but it's almost been an hour, and I don't want to keep you too much longer here, but I would like, if you wouldn't mind, to plug your socials so people could go over and follow you and kind of get an idea of what I seen there on your Instagram, and kind of see what this is all about.
Okay. I believe my Instagram is Apprentice Falconer. I think I'm looking now. I think, yeah, Apprentice Falconer is my Instagram. Unfortunately, I'm on my third ban from TikTok, so I don't recommend that. Everything I put on there is completely nature, but we all know what's on TikTok, and that's allowable. But my raptor hunting is, somewhat offensive. Whatever, So, Instagram, I post a pretty good bit on. I do have a YouTube channel. You just have to search Ben 4x4's channel, BENS 4x4 apostrophe S channel, and it should come up with me. I'm holding a picture of a beautiful Eastern turkey. That's me. That's the Ben Hill you need to find. But I didn't do any filming this year, and I'm very embarrassed for that. Facebook, Benjamin Hill, I believe. I probably post more on that than anything, other than the Snapchat, which Snapchat will be Coyote Killer, started with a K. Prior to falconry, I was a huge predator hunter, but kind of took back over to falconry. So yeah. That's how you can contact.
Okay, great. And I'll try to go through there and get links and put in the show notes so people make it easier for people to go over and take a look at it and all. And I was going to mention you mentioned about TikTok banning you. And I done a podcast with the guy that owns the app, runs the app, but there's an app called Go Wild, and it's for hunters, and you can post stuff like your falconry and tree.
What we should be able to.
Yeah. What we should be able to, but you can do it over there uncensored, and they don't cut any of that stuff out. It's a cool app. I don't use it.
What was it called?
It's called Go Wild. I don't use it as much as I should, but I do use it some, and I do like it. It's a lot of hunting content. That's all pretty much that's over there. Cool. Of all different kinds. So, well, Ben, I appreciate you taking the time to be on the podcast today, and I'll shoot you a text message and let you know when this will be out with a link so you can follow the podcast. And man, I really appreciate you sharing your sport with us today and getting this information out to the public.
Jason, I really appreciate you getting in touch with me, man. I truly do. This has been fun.
All right, buddy. Thank you so much, and we will talk at you later.
Have a good evening, sir. Thank you, Jason.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys, for listening to the Coonhound Collective podcast today. We really appreciate you taking your time out of your day to listen to the podcast. If you don't mind, head over to Facebook and give us a like, and head over to Instagram and give us a follow. It's both at the Coonhound Collective. Also, if you would like to reach us here at the Coonhound Collective, you can reach us at thecoonhoundcollective@gmail.com. If there's someone that you would like to hear on the podcast or a product that you would like to hear talked about, please send it to thecoonhoundcollective@gmail.com. Thanks again. Have a great day.